My name is Eleanor Grace, I'm 60 years old, and I will tell you a story most mothers could never even whisper aloud. For years, I have carried a secret so heavy that it has bent my back more than age ever could. People look at me and see a quiet old woman with kind eyes and soft hands. But inside, I carry the memory of betrayal so sharp it still cuts through my sleep. They say a son is his mother's greatest pride. They say no bond is stronger than the one between blood. But what happens when the same hands you once held as a baby are the hands that shove you into the abyss? What happens when your heartbeat, the one you gave life to, becomes the rhythm of your death? I remember that night on the cliff. The moon was bright, the air biting, and my son's face cold unrecognizable burned itself into my soul. As the ground disappeared beneath us, I heard only one voice, my husband's whisper in the dark. Pretend we're dead. Why would our son want to bury us alive? What sin had we committed in his eyes? And why did silence become the only way to survive? This is not just a memory. This is a wound that never healed. And tonight, I will open it before you. If you wish to hear more of my stories, please subscribe to my channel. I was born in a small town where everyone knew each other's names, and secrets traveled faster than the wind. My childhood was simple, marked by the smell of my mother's bread and the sound of my father's boots when he returned from work. I thought life was hard back then growing up poor, with holes in my shoes and winters that froze our bones. But now, at 60, I realized those were the sweetest years of my life, because innocence, once lost, never returns. I met Richard Grace when I was just 18. He was tall, with kind eyes that seemed to promise safety. My parents didn't approve. He came from a broken family, with no money and a shadow in his past, but my heart saw something no one else did. Against everyone's warnings, I married him. And for years, despite the struggles, we were happy. We built a life with our bare hands, a small house, secondhand furniture, and laughter that filled the empty rooms. When our son Daniel was born, I thought my world was complete. I remember the first time I held him, his tiny fingers wrapped around mine, his cries softening the moment I whispered his name. I believed love like that could never die. I believed he would be my legacy, my pride, the one who would protect me when age turned me fragile. But I was wrong. From a young age, Daniel was different. He was bright, too bright sometimes, his questions sharp, his gaze calculating. Teachers praised his intelligence, but I saw something behind those eyes that unsettled me. He was restless, impatient, and often cruel in small ways. Once, I caught him pulling the wings off a butterfly, watching it struggle on the ground. I scolded him, but he only stared back at me with a smile that froze my heart. Richard said, "He'll grow out of it. He's just a boy." But deep inside, I felt a chill. As Daniel grew older, the distance between us grew too. He wanted more money, more status, more recognition. Our humble life wasn't enough for him. He hated the small house, the old car, the second-hand clothes. "You've given me nothing," he shouted once when he was 16. Other parents build empires for their children. "You too. You gave me scraps." I cried that night, but Richard held me and said, "He's young. He'll understand when he's older." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that love could fix everything. But love, I learned, is not always enough. By the time Daniel turned 25, he had changed completely. He was ambitious, ruthless even. He climbed through life like it was a ladder, using people as his steps. He rarely visited us, except when he needed money. I didn't mind giving. I was his mother. After all, but each time, I felt the gap widen, as though I was losing him piece by piece. Then came the night that changed everything. Daniel invited us to a dinner by the cliffs. He said he wanted to celebrate a new business deal, a new chapter of his life. I remember how happy I felt, thinking maybe this was the moment he would finally come back to us. I wore my best dress, the one with tiny flowers on the collar, and Richard wore his old gray suit. We drove with excitement, believing our son wanted us close again. But from the moment we arrived, something felt wrong. Daniel was too calm, too polite, his smile fixed but empty. The dinner was quiet, filled with half-hearted conversations. And then, after the meal, he suggested we take a walk to the cliff's edge to see the view. I remember my stomach twisting, but I followed anyway. Because when you are a mother, you follow your child even when the path feels dangerous. The night was cold, the wind sharp. Richard held my hand as we stood near the edge. And then, it happened. Daniel's voice was low, almost a whisper. "You should have stayed gone." Before I could understand his words, he shoved us. His hands, those same hands I once held when they were small and soft, thrust us into the darkness. I felt the world disappear beneath me. The air was torn from my lungs. My scream drowned in the roaring wind. And then, through the chaos, I heard Richard's voice beside me. Pretend we're dead. The next moment, everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I expected nothing but darkness, death, silence, the end. But instead, there was pain-searing, merciless pain shooting through my body. My head throbbed, my ribs screamed, and every breath tasted of dirt and blood. For a long while, I couldn't move. I thought perhaps this was hell. Broken bones, endless agony. The sound of the sea crashing below like laughter, mocking my survival. And then I heard Richard's voice. Weak, broken, but alive. Eleanor, are you breathing? I wanted to cry, but my tears refused to fall. Yes, I whispered, though it felt like lying. Every inch of me screamed otherwise. Somehow, by some miracle, we had landed on a ledge, a jagged shelf of rock halfway down the cliff. We should have died. Daniel must have believed we had. Richard dragged himself closer to me. Blood streaked his face, his arm twisted at a sickening angle. Yet his eyes, those steady eyes I fell in love with all those years ago, still held fire. Listen to me, he said, clutching my hand. We have to stay hidden. He thinks we're gone. We must let him believe it. I wanted to protest. I wanted to scream my son's name into the night. Demand an answer. Demand a reason. Why? Daniel, why would you do this? But Richard's grip tightened, silencing me. If he finds out we lived, he'll try again. And next time, we won't be lucky. Those words pierced deeper than my wounds. How could a father say that about his own son? How could a mother believe it? Yet I knew he was right. Daniel's shove wasn't an accident. His words before he pushed Usu should have stayed gone-echoed like a curse. He had planned this. He wanted us erased. Hours passed on that ledge, the cold seeping into my bones. I drifted in and out of consciousness, my mind replaying every moment of Daniel's childhood. His first steps, his laughter when Richard swung him onto his shoulders, his voice calling, "Mama." How could that little boy, my boy, become this? Where had we gone wrong? At dawn, Richard shook me awake. "We have to climb down," he whispered. "We can't go up. He might be waiting." The descent was torture. My body wanted to give up with every move, but fear kept me alive. I knew if I let go, it wouldn't just be my death, it would mean Daniel had one. Somehow, crawling, slipping, clinging with bloodied fingers, we made it down to the bottom of the cliff. The sea sprayed cold salt into our wounds. My legs gave out the moment we touched the ground. We stumbled into the forest nearby, hiding among the trees until nightfall. My mind spun with questions I couldn't answer. Why did our son want us dead? Was it money? Shame? Hatred I had been too blind to see? I searched my heart for clues, for moments I might have missed. And then, I remembered. The phone call 2 weeks before. Daniel had visited us, pacing around our kitchen like a caged animal. He took a call outside, thinking we couldn't hear. But I caught fragments through the window. They can't know. They'll ruin everything. I'll handle it. When I asked him about it, he smiled too icily, kissed my forehead, and changed the subject. Had Richard heard it too? I wanted to ask, but we were too busy surviving. For days, we hid. Richard found a fisherman willing to take us across the river. Far from the cliffs, far from the town where everyone believed we were gone. We gave no names, no explanations. We became ghosts. At night, I lay awake in the dark, listening to Richard's labored breathing. His arm never healed right. My body ached in ways I can't describe, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the storm in my heart. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel's face, the coldness, the finality, the moment his hands pushed me. My son was my murderer, and yet, some part of me clung to hope. Maybe there was a reason. Maybe someone had forced him, threatened him. Maybe he wasn't lost forever. That hope kept me breathing when despair told me to stop. Weeks turned into months. We built a fragile existence in hiding, living under false names, scraping by with whatever work Richard's broken body could still manage. I aged faster in those months than in the decades before. I learned silence. I learned to carry my grief like a second skin. But then, one evening, as the sun bled red into the horizon, Richard came home pale and shaking. He had gone into town for supplies. "Eleanor," he whispered, shutting the door behind him. I saw him. My heart nearly stopped. "Who?" "Daniel," he said, his voice trembling with something between rage and sorrow. He was there, laughing, smiling, living like nothing happened. I gripped the edge of the table, my body trembling. My son was alive, thriving, while we hid like the dead. "What do we do?" I asked, though I already feared the answer. Richard's jaw tightened. He looked at me with a determination I hadn't seen since the night of the cliff. "We find out the truth. Whatever he's hiding, we need to know. And when we do, his voice broke. We'll decide if we keep pretending or if it's time to rise from the dead. The night after Richard told me he had seen Daniel, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of the tiny rented room we called home, my mind spinning like a broken record. My son was alive, walking in the same world as us, while we remained shadows. I couldn't decide if I wanted to embrace him or destroy him. Richard watched me from his side of the bed, his breathing uneven. "You're thinking of him," he said softly. "How can I not?" I whispered. "He is my son, our son." His silence cut me deeper than his words ever could. I knew Richard loved Daniel once, but since the night at the cliff, I sensed something had shifted inside him. Fathers can turn their grief into rage more easily than mothers can. A mother carries hope until it poisons her. The next day, Richard insisted on returning to town. I wanted to go with him, but my body was still frail, and he worried someone might recognize me. He left at dawn, his coat patched at the elbows, his broken arm hidden inside the sleeve. He returned hours later with a face pale as chalk. "Eleanor," he said, closing the door with shaking hands. "Daniel isn't just alive, he's powerful." My heart stumbled. "What do you mean?" "He's running a company. Big. People talk about him like he's a king. But that's not all." Richard's voice cracked. "They say he's ruthless. People disappear around him. Men who cross him, they're gone." I clutched my chest as the room spun. My son, the boy I once tucked into bed with lullabies, was now a man others feared. Was this what he pushed us into silence for? Because we knew too much. "What is he hiding?" I asked, though part of me dreaded the answer. Richard's jaw tightened. "I don't know, but I intend to find out." Over the next weeks, Richard followed Daniel's shadow. He watched his office from across the street, listened to conversations in the pubs, bribed a clerk for scraps of information. Each night, he returned with fragments of a picture that chilled me to my core. Daniel was laundering money, not small sums, millions. He had ties to dangerous men, people whose names Richard dared not speak aloud. And worse, he was eliminating anyone who threatened his empire. His charm and polished smile were only masks hiding a monster. And then I remembered the phone call I overheard weeks before the cliff. "They can't know. I'll handle it." We were the they. My son had tried to bury us because we had seen too much. But if that was true, why hadn't he killed us sooner? Why invite us to dinner? Why whisper those words? "You should have stayed gone." Something wasn't fitting, and that puzzle gnawed at me until my chest ached. One evening, unable to take the silence anymore, I told Richard, I have to see him, face to face. I need to hear from his lips why he did it. Richard slammed his fist against the table, his voice fierce. "No, Eleanor, you don't understand. He won't see you as his mother anymore. He'll see you as a threat." "Then let him," I whispered, my eyes wet, because I'd rather die knowing the truth than live forever in this silence. Richard turned away, his shoulders trembling. He didn't argue again. A week later, fate gave me what I asked for. I was walking through the market, scarf pulled low across my face, when I froze. Across the street, tall and confident in a dark suit, was Daniel. My heart slammed against my ribs. He hadn't changed much, the sharp jawline, the piercing eyes, but there was something colder now, something unrecognizable. And then it happened. For one brief second, his gaze swept across the crowd and landed on me. My breath stopped. Did he see me? His eyes lingered, narrowing slightly, but then someone called his name, and he turned away. I stood frozen, shaking, my knees weak. When I returned to our room, Richard knew before I said a word. "He saw you," Richard whispered, his face drained of color. "I don't know," I said, trembling. Maybe not, but deep inside, I felt it. A mother knows when her child has recognized her. That night, sleep evaded us both. Every creak of the floorboards, every howl of the wind, felt like footsteps coming closer. Richard paced the room, his hand gripping a knife as though he expected Daniel to break down the door at any moment. And then, just before dawn, a sound shattered the silence. A knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks on the door. Richard's eyes widened. He motioned for me to stay still, his finger pressed to his lips. The knocks came again, louder this time. And then a voice. Calm, steady, familiar. "Mother, father, I know you're in there." For a moment, the world stopped. The sound of Daniel's voice, my son's voice, sent 1,000 knives through my chest. It was calm, almost gentle, as though he were calling us to dinner, not hunting the parents he had cast into death. Richard's hand tightened around the knife. His jaw was clenched so hard I feared it might crack. He shook his head at me, eyes burning with warning. Don't move. Don't answer. But a mother's heart doesn't follow reason. It beats to its own rhythm, one carved by years of lullabies, scraped knees, and whispered goodnights. My lips trembled. I wanted to call out, to say, Daniel, it's me, it's your mother, but the look in Richard's eyes pinned me still. Another knock, this time, harder. The wooden frame rattled. Mother. Father. Open the door, we need to talk. His voice was steady, but beneath it, I caught something darker. Control, authority. The kind of tone that doesn't request, it commands. Richard pulled me toward the back, whispering, don't make a sound. If he knows, if he's certain, we're finished. We held our breath as the silence stretched. Then came the sound of footsteps retreating, slow and deliberate. Like a predator circling prey it knew could not escape. I pressed my face into Richard's chest and cried without tears. My heart screamed inside me. Why, Daniel? What truth are you hiding that's worth killing us for? That night, Richard made a decision. We can't stay hidden forever, he said. If we run, he'll chase us. If we wait, he'll trap us. We need to know what we're fighting. The next day, Richard disguised himself and followed Daniel deeper than before into a private gathering at a grand estate on the edge of town. He returned long after midnight, eyes hollow, face gray as ash. What did you see? I asked, my voice small, fragile. Richard sat down heavily. It wasn't a meeting, Eleanor. It was a performance. Men in suits, women in gowns, glasses raised in toasts. But the words they spoke. He dragged a trembling hand through his hair. It was power. Control. Daniel stood at the head like a king. He spoke of silence, of loyalty, and when one man disagreed, even slightly, Richard's voice broke. They dragged him out. No one saw him again. My stomach twisted. And Daniel, he didn't flinch. He watched it happen as though it were business. No son of mine could look so cold. But I remembered his eyes at the market, how they had lingered, searching my face. Cold, yes, but also conflicted. A shadow of the boy who once held my hand when the thunder scared him. I clung to that shadow like it was my last lifeline. Days passed in dreadful waiting. We lived like ghosts, hiding in alleys, shifting from one borrowed room to another. Every time a door creaked, every time a stranger looked too long, I wondered if Daniel's men were upon us. And then, he struck. It was evening. Richard had gone to fetch water from the well. I sat alone, mending the hem of my worn dress. When the door opened softly, I looked up and there he was. Daniel. He stepped inside as though he owned the air in my lungs. The ground beneath my feet. Tall, sharp, eyes like glass. For a moment, the room shrank to nothing but the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. Mother, he said. His voice was low, deliberate. I knew you couldn't be gone. Tears welled instantly. My throat closed. Daniel. He closed the door gently behind him, leaning against it. Why didn't you stay silent? Why couldn't you just disappear? I rose to my feet, trembling. Because I'm your mother, and a mother cannot disappear from her child's heart. For the first time, his mask cracked. His jaw tightened. His eyes flickered. You don't understand what you've done. What you know. If they find out you're alive, then tell me. I whispered, stepping closer. Tell me the truth. What are you so afraid of us knowing? His face hardened again. It's safer if you don't. For both of you. At that moment, Richard's voice cut through the air behind him. Step away from her. Daniel. Daniel didn't flinch. He turned his head slightly, smirking at the sight of his father holding the knife. Trembling but resolute. Father, Daniel said, almost mockingly. Still the protector. Always the fighter. Richard's voice was ragged with rage. You tried to kill us. Daniel's expression shifted, calm, cold, almost sorrowful. I did what I had to. You were in the wrong place, at the wrong time. You heard things you weren't meant to hear. And for that, you'd kill your own parents. Richard spat. Daniel's eyes darkened. For that, I'd kill anyone. Silence fell like a noose tightening around us. My knees buckled, my soul screaming at the boy before me. My boy. My Daniel. Then look me in the eye. I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Look at me, Daniel, and tell me, am I still your mother? His lips parted. His eyes flickered with something I couldn't name. But before he could answer, a noise outside shattered the moment. Heavy boots, voices, men approaching. Daniel's face twisted with urgency. They're here. Who? Richard demanded. Daniel's reply was a whisper. The people I work for. If they see you alive, you won't have a choice. Neither will I. He moved to the door, his hand on the latch, his eyes locked with mine. Stay quiet, stay hidden, or next time. I won't be able to stop them. And then he was gone, vanishing into the night just as the boots thundered closer. I fell into Richard's arms, my whole body trembling. For the furs. The night Daniel left us with that warning, I felt my soul tear in two. Half of me wanted to believe him that somewhere, buried under the cold mask, my boy still lived. The other half knew the truth. We were fugitives, not just from him, but from the world he served. Richard paced the room like a caged animal. He's not our son anymore, Eleanor. He belongs to them. I sat on the bed, hands trembling. No, I whispered. He belongs to me. He came from me. That part of him can't be erased. Richard looked at me with broken eyes, but he didn't argue. Perhaps because, deep down, he too longed to believe. Days turned into weeks. We moved constantly, always hiding, always looking over our shoulders. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I thought I heard Daniel's footsteps following. Sometimes, I wished I did. Then one evening, it happened. We were leaving a safe house on the edge of the woods when headlights blinded us. A car screeched to a halt. Black-suited men poured out, guns raised. My heart stopped. Richard pulled me behind him, knife in hand, but what could a blade do against bullets? And then, Daniel stepped out of the car. He looked different this time, harder, colder, no hesitation in his stride. He waved his hand, and the men lowered their guns but did not leave. They stood like shadows waiting for a command. Enough running, Daniel said, his voice cutting through the night. Richard roared, if you're here to finish what you started, do it. But no, this you will never kill the love we had for you. I clutched his arm. Richard, please, but Daniel's gaze was fixed on me. Mother, you shouldn't be here. You should have stayed gone. Why couldn't you? Tears blurred my vision. Because I am your mother. I carried you. I raised you. I gave you every breath of my life. How could I vanish when my son walks in darkness? Something flickered in his eyes, pan guilt, maybe even love, but he turned away, jaw tight. You don't understand. They're watching. Always. If they see weakness in me, I lose everything. And if I lose everything, we all die. Richard spat on the ground. You already lost everything. You lost us. The words sliced deeper than any knife. Daniel flinched barely, but enough for me to see. The men shifted uneasily. One stepped forward. Sir, orders are clear. Loose ends must be tied. My blood froze. Loose ends. That's all we were to them. Not parents. Not people. Just problems to erase. Daniel raised a hand to silence them. His voice dropped, sharp and deadly. I'll handle this. He turned back to us. For a moment, his mask slipped, and I saw him, my little boy, the child who once clung to my hand during storms. His voice cracked, just slightly. Go now, don't look back. Don't ever try to find me again. I took a step closer, my tears falling freely. Daniel, if I leave tonight, will I ever see you again? His jaw trembled. His lips parted, but no sound came. Then he turned his face away, the mask snapping back into place. If you love me, pretend you never had a son. Those words shattered me more than the cliff ever could. Richard dragged me back, his grip firm though his own tears glistened. We slipped into the shadows of the trees, my sobs swallowed by the night. Behind us, Daniel barked orders, his voice hard once more. The men obeyed. We kept walking. Hours, miles, until the lights were gone and the woods were silent. And in that silence, the truth settled over me like a shroud. I had lost my son not to death, but to a darkness deeper than death. He was alive, yet gone. Breathing, yet unreachable. Richard held me as I wept, whispering, he made his choice, Eleanor. Now we must make ours. And so we chose to vanish. To live nameless, faceless, always hiding. Because survival was the only rebellion left to us. But even now, as I sit here in this small dim room, an old woman with trembling hands, I wonder, did he spare us out of love? Or did he let us go only because he knew the world would silence us eventually? I may never know, but one truth burns eternal in my heart. I gave birth to a son named Daniel Grace, and though the world may see him as a monster, though he himself asked me to forget, I never will. Because a mother never buries her child, not truly, not even when he buries her first.